welcome to Core Knowledge Part 4, Listening and Learning Strand, a closer look at the listening and learning lessons. As always, please make sure that you have your handouts ready. You'll need the folder titled Part 4, as we will access these handouts. You'll also need your notebook for taking notes and doing a quick write or two. Let's get started. First, let's pause and quick write. Considering what is important to develop knowledge and vocabulary in young students, and what you uncovered in your examination of the initial listening and learning materials, what do you anticipate will be the most important aspects in a listening and learning lesson? My guess is you jotted things like knowledge building, or the domains, or vocabulary. If so, you're right on target. Our objective for this session is to explore the structure and contents of a listening and learning lesson. You've had a chance to look at the materials as a whole. Let's take a closer look at a specific listening and learning lesson and its components. Listening and learning lessons take about 60 minutes of instructional time, and they are structured largely in the same way each day. There's a read aloud, which takes 35 to 40 minutes. About 10 minutes of this is introducing the read aloud with students, explaining what they're going to learn about and explore in that day's read aloud. In presenting the read aloud, you're actually going to conduct the read aloud with students. Then there's an opportunity to discuss the read aloud with strong text-dependent questions that unlock the key ideas and vocabulary in that day's read aloud. We'll talk about some recommendations for how to make this section engaging for students. In discussing the read aloud, there are comprehension questions, those text-dependent questions, as well as some word work. The extension activities, or Part B, take about 15 to 20 minutes. These don't have to be done directly after the read aloud. They can be conducted later during the same day as perhaps part of the writing instructional block or small group or center time. They can also be spread across multiple days where time permits. We know that lessons are text focused, and the text is the vehicle through which students build that knowledge and vocabulary. So now let's take some time to dig into a lesson. Please go to your handouts in Part 3, slide 45, titled The Chinese New Year. Review the lesson plan and jot down answers to the following. How is this lesson structured? What are the different ways students are engaged in the learning process? And how does the lesson plan connect to the core reading instruction section of the literacy framework and the shifts? This should take you about 15 minutes. Please press pause, answer these questions, and then we'll do a brief debrief. Thank you for taking that time. My guess is through reading through this sample lesson plan is that you notice the lesson plan is highly structured. There's a lot of detail and a lot of information provided for the teacher. This is not meant to indicate that this is a script. Teachers are not meant to read this word by word. You have flexibility in adjusting the questions or how you'll introduce the read aloud. Ultimately, you need to make this script your own. You need to know it well enough to be able to introduce the read aloud, conduct the read aloud, and guide students through those questions and the word work without having to read it word by word. Key vocabulary is also already pulled out so that you can easily identify and address the words students most need to learn. Finally, the lesson plan is focused on building knowledge of the topic through this read aloud, which is exactly what is included in the Charlotte L.I.F.T.ed framework. Listening and Learning Part B, this extension activity, is actually an essential part of the learning experience. We often consider it as optional, but it's actually when students become active in their learning from Part A. In Part A, students may, for example, read about the Chinese New Year, but it's in Part B that they get a chance to do activities and engage in collaboration with other students that helps them really apply these new concepts and ideas. This cements their new knowledge and words through meaningful experience. For this reason alone, Part B must be conducted. So let's take a look at the Part B that accompanies the lesson that you just read. We'd like you to pause and read the Part B that accompanies this lesson. Please take your notebook and answer the following questions. What do students gain from completing the Part B activities? What would be missing for them if they did not complete this activity? Please take about 15 minutes, answer these questions, and read through this Part B, and then we'll debrief. Thank you. A couple of things to note is that working more closely with vocabulary through this word work activity, including making connections with the word tradition within their own family, is a powerful way for students to cement that word. It also provides opportunities for students to be inclusive of other cultures and traditions that may be present in your classroom. Additionally, by using the Venn diagram provided in this Part B, students learn the skill of comparing cultural activities they have studied, which can really reveal to the teacher how much information they have learned in the study of this domain. It can also provide opportunities for the teacher to re-explain, reread, intervene, or work with particular students who may need more support. Finally, they also get the chance to work in pairs. Collaboration is a skill students must develop at this stage, and collaborating around content calls them to use the words they are learning as well as the information and share it with each other. As you can see, Part B is a really important part of the experience and a great way to cognitively develop your students around this content. So some best practices. Do, as I pointed out before, prepare effectively. You'll need to know the text very well as what questions you'll be asking. Anticipate other visuals or supports that students might need and get creative. If there are pictures that students can create, costumes that they can put on, music or other visuals that you can bring in to bring this content to life, you are encouraged to do so. The more engaging and exciting and creative this material is, the more students will want to engage in it and the more fun they will have doing so. To that end, express interest and excitement in all the domain topics. Whether or not you personally are very excited about early civilizations, your excitement and enthusiasm will directly relate to how excited students are. Also make sure to involve students. Lots of discussion. Think pair shares. Time to draw or write to discuss what they are learning. The more they engage orally, as well as in writing or drawing in the topic, the more they will learn. Remembering always, the goal is building knowledge and vocabulary. That's what this entire strand is about. So providing as many opportunities for students to engage in this content is very important. A few refrain froms. Refrain from saving all of those discussion read aloud questions for the end of the reading. Feel free to ask them as you read. Students may struggle with answering 5 or 6 questions after they've heard an entire read aloud. Find ways to pepper those questions in and have students talk to each other as they answer them. Also refrain from skipping Part B. As we noted, it's an essential part of cementing that knowledge and giving students the opportunity to use the information they are learning rather than just experience it through read aloud. Refrain from teaching the domains out of order if at all possible. It's tempting to teach the domain on Columbus around Columbus Day. However, students need background knowledge in a different order in order to truly gain this knowledge and vocabulary. Teaching the domains in order ensures that students get that logical progression through the content. And finally, refrain from waiting till the very end of the domain to see whether or not students have learned. Use those discussion questions, use those Part Bs, use the other activities that come with your anthology to ensure day by day students are picking up what you are putting down. So for discussion, and please submit your responses on the discussion board, what are the essential components of the listening and learning lesson? How does the lesson plan connect to the core reading instruction section of the literacy framework and the shifts? Question 2, why is Part B an essential part of the core knowledge lesson sequence? And how is this revealed in the example you explore? Finally, what questions do you have for your leaders about effective implementation of a core knowledge listening and learning lesson, both Part A and B? Thank you for digging into a lesson with me. We'll see you next time for intervention within listening and learning.